Perfect. All right. It helps if you turn it on. Fantastic. Okay. Everybody's here for chocolate, right? Right. Okay. We do have chocolate at our booth, so stop by, say hi. I'm Rob. I've been working a little over 10 years in infrastructure automation, and a couple other things. And I also created Chocolatey a few years ago. And so today we're going to talk about the story of Windows automation a bit, and kind of how we've come to Chocolatey and all of that, right? And so let's just begin. Let's talk about a story. It's possibly your story, right? You were looking for modern automation, so you're all gung-ho. That or your boss said you're going to automate Windows. And so you probably used traditional tools at the time, right? And some of those, it could have been manual configuration, golden images, endpoint management tools. Not these are necessarily bad. They just don't fit well into more, more modern automation scenarios, right? So test infrastructure, all that good stuff. That's what we're talking about. You want that feature-rich stuff, some of the stuff that Steve was talking about last hour. Infrastructure as code, source control, all that stuff. And so you've probably come to PowerShell DSC. PowerShell DSC translates those skills and the knowledge of PowerShell in, and you're able to couple it with configuration management platforms, right? If you're using something like Puppet or Chef. Right? So you can translate DSC right into that as well and be able to use all that knowledge. So as you started and you were working on this and you modernized your Windows automation, and it was like rainbows and unicorns. And just go with it, okay? Right? Rainbows and unicorns. And so this is you, you're like automating, everything's great, you're out there, you're doing your thing, your boss is happy, right? All your coworkers are dancing in the halls, right? Right? And then all this is going on, but something isn't right. So it's a little off. Right? So configuration management alone, it's missing something. Because when we do Windows, right, when we do some configuration management, there's a lot more that goes into it. We need to do that package management, we do that software management. And and we always like to say, how many people in here install Windows and then you never touch it again, it's good to go. You don't have to do anything additional. Right? You don't have to put any software on it. Don't have to do any configuration. You just give them the box and say, here you go, that's it. One person. Awesome. All right, so lots of different installers are out there, right? Then that's not the only way that you bring software. There's software that comes in the form of zip packages and your own internal software. Hopefully you're not creating MSIs to deploy locally. It's really, really bad. But they're messy, right? It's kind of, as Clint Eastwood would say, right? A little bit like the Wild West. And when you were looking at PowerShell DSC, you probably looked at the package resource and you thought, wow, this is lacking a bit, right? I have to have MSIs if I'm going to use that. Otherwise, it wants to reinstall everything every time, right? And then if you want to do upgrades, good luck. And so fortunately, there's a little bit of a better way, right? So that's where Chocolatey comes in. Everybody here knows what Chocolatey is, right? Anybody not know what Chocolatey is? Oh, fantastic. So that's what this slide is for. It is software management. It's based in PowerShell, right? So you get to do a lot with the skills that you already have. You're translating it right into PowerShell. The packages are just really fancy zip files. And it really kind of adds an additional element to all of your deployment automation. And so you knew about Chocolatey, and you're asking, well, okay, does it work well in an organizational scenario? And so you recognize this? Anybody not know what this is? Okay, that's good. We're awake in here. All right, so that's an iceberg. So what does it represent? So here's a hint, right? So if you've been on to chocolatey.org, right, you see that there's a community repository, and there's a lot of packages that are up there. And this community repository, again, it's a community repository. So we'll get into that in a second. Here it is again. It's very tiny now, right? And that community repository, it is in the public. It does have some issues because it's in the public. It has distribution rights issues, so a lot of the packages are there. Can't actually embed the software they represent. They have to reach out further to the internet at runtime, and I have to tell you that's a bit of a reliability issue, right, in a lot of senses. Put it another way, Microsoft would get really upset if the Office 365 packages on the community repository actually contained the Office 365 binaries and didn't pull them at runtime. And so below this line, so this is that line to the internet, this is where organizations are, right? So if you can think about it, that's a really small amount of packages up there. This is the rest of stuff you'll never see. Right? Probably millions of packages are out there and thousands of organizations. Right? So they're doing everything completely offline, completely internal. And yeah, so there's that aspect. And everything is, much better in this sense. And so let's take a step back. Let's evaluate what's possible. I'm going to go ahead and kick this off because the shimmer is fun. So Chocolatey is really kind of a universal approach to your native installers, your zips, those runtime binaries, really anything that you want to deploy or manage. That's where Chocolatey can come in, right? And it does integrate with the configuration management stuff, right? So it does integrate with DSC very well. And a lot of sweet stuff, even in the open source edition, as far as business-friendly features. It's been around for over 6 years. And if anybody in here used it 5 years ago, thank God. Oh, no? Yeah? Wow. OK. I'm sorry. It's gotten a lot better. So, what's that? Yeah. And so the first question a lot of people have is, what's the difference between open source and Chocolatey for Business, right? So we call that C for B. Chocolatey's open source version, it works really well in organizations, but it is very strictly about just package management. When it comes to Chocolatey for Business, it's a much smoother experience out of the box. Right? So it does better things with system integration. We're adding endpoint management. We're really not going to talk about a lot of that today. We did that at WinOps, and so we're going to focus more on some of the DSC stuff. But we'll touch a couple of things here. If you like GUIs, hopefully nobody in here is, well, you're at a PowerShell conference, so you should start getting more of the command line. So just saying. But you may have coworkers, right? So that might happen. There are features that are geared specifically for organizations in the business edition. And so this is probably a really familiar interface for folks that have been using Chocolatey for a while. And again, we're not going to focus on this, but there's also a GUI. So moving on. So another thing about Chocolatey, it does have that idea of automatic uninstallation. So if I create a script that installs, we call them installer packages, packages that install software into programs and features, 9 times out of 10, I don't need an uninstall script to remove it because Chocolatey has already captured a snapshot, knows how to get rid of that automatically for me. Automatically, that's a word sometimes. And does integrate with everything. Here's PowerShell. But any of the other things, if you do have SCCM in your environments and you want to give them a kind of a bridge to get to DSC or to something else, you can start building all of this stuff up in that infrastructure and packages and kind of move it in. So it is a nice bridge for that. Some of the reporting and auditing features, the big thing really is being able to see beyond programs and features, really see all of the stuff that Chocolatey's managing. And another thing we have is package audit. We'll have the slide deck so you could actually look through this and figure that out. Another thing, do you want to make some of those systems like SCCM a bit smarter when they're actually reporting on inventory? We have the ability to show everything that Chocolatey sees in programs and features as well. And so for things that have an underlying native installer like Launchie, right? That'll show up just as it should. For something that you might be bringing in, let's like screen to GIF here, or sysinternals, you'll be able to show that in programs and features as well. Right, so you'll get the Chocolatey managed entries. And if the only reason that your development folks are building MSIs is just so it can show up here, you don't have to do that anymore. They will love you for that. Trust me. Reporting, very rich in some of that detailed reporting, especially when you're trying to deploy out to 100 systems and it's Windows, and invariably like 1 or 2 of those systems fail, and usually it's a pending reboot, but you never know. Another report that it has is it's able to tell you about the things that are outdated. So if you're inclined to want to know that information, you can get that as well. All right, so the repositories. This picture's a little out of date. It's getting closer to 200 million now, but as we were talking about, that community repository, going back to the distribution rights, and that making it not fully reliable. But for most organizations, this is secondary. It's important. The most important thing for them is being able to trust and fully control that process. So they just don't use this, right? But they may take packages from here and go through a process where they remove all those internet dependencies. They call that internalization, and do that as well. So typically, you're going to be setting up your own internal server, and you can do that We're going to recommend one of those commercial entities. So that's either going to be myget, proget, Sonatype Nexus, or Artifactory. Out of those four, myget is a hosted one. So if you want to offload that infrastructure, you can give that to myget. If you want to own that, then proget, Nexus, and Artifactory are really good ways to go. So in here, how many people have one of those three set up? Anybody have the Chocolatey server set up? It's pretty good too. Nobody. Fantastic. Man. So creating software deployment packages, you'll see me doing a bit of that. But when we talk about packages in Chocolatey speak, we're talking about the NUPKG file. We call it new package. Some people call it nupkegs. I can't get it. It's new package. And so those are fancy zip files. You could actually rename it to an archive, unzip it. You'll be able to see the metadata that's in there, see PowerShell a lot of times, and also, internally especially, you're going to see a lot of your runtime binaries, your native runtime stuff in there as well. For creating packages, we have the nice Choco New, and that actually will put up a lot of stuff for you. We might take a look at that once we hit the demo, just so you can see that. But you can also create your own packaging templates, and we got some blog posts out there for that. We got a nice walkthrough for it. So I will tell you, our documentation, it's great if you know what you're looking for. The worst thing about documentation is sometimes making sure the search works good. Search does not work very good. So we're working on that. We're going to put more non-reference docs, more of those conceptual docs, more of those walkthroughs, and some of that stuff in there in the next few months. So making that process of learning a bit easier. There's also Package Builder. This is kind of nice if you're really trying to speed up that process. So if you have a lot of installers and zips and stuff in an archive, and you're really trying to get everything into Chocolatey as fast as possible, this will cut weeks or months out of your process. So it's able to look directly at those installers and figure out how to create the silent arguments, how to just wrap that entire package. And so for about 70% of the software out there, it can do that fully. For the stuff that it's not able to fully do, it can give you a to-do list. And so that to-do list is usually, because it's a custom installer, it's like SQL Server, right? It's not going to create that XML file for you. So in the to-do list, you'll just have to figure out, get that in there, and you'll be done. Another thing that we have is, in the business edition anyway, is also package internalizer. And so some folks will do this manually. And we talked to a lot of organizations, and so they really wanted a way to take this work that they are doing manually and be able to script it, put it into TeamCity, Jenkins, or some other type of CI or scheduled task, if you will, and have it be able to take packages and some of that good logic from the community repository, be able to fully internalize those things and make them offline, right? And so that's what that does. And so a lot of people see those two features and they're like, well, how does that work? And so I want to introduce my friend Shia LaBeouf. Apologize if you've seen all 3 days. We've been doing this presentation. It's been different every day, so this is the most different. All right, so there's also Synchronizer. Synchronizer is able to, so when you install packages with Chocolatey that install stuff into programs and features, you really have to make sure when you upgrade and uninstall, all of that stuff goes through Chocolatey in the open source edition. Because if you go over to programs and features and manually uninstall it or upgrade it, or it's like Chrome that upgrades every 10 minutes, Chocolatey doesn't see that happen, right, in the open source side. Synchronizer does, so it's making sure that that state that's on the installer side gets projected back so that Chocolatey is updating. So in the picture, it's removing the 1Password package because the 1Password software was uninstalled outside of Chocolatey. And we have the other side. So if you have an existing system, you want to get it ramped up really quickly, you would drop Chocolatey on there and call Chocolatey Sync. It'd look through everything that's in programs and features and baseline it. So it basically generate packaging on the fly, bring it under Chocolatey management, so you could upgrade everything from there. Lots of other features. Yeah, so like I said, great reference docs. So if you know what you're looking for, you're good. But I'll just say it really quickly. If you want to extend functionality of Chocolatey, you can create your own functionality. PowerShell modules, we call them Chocolatey Extensions. You manage them just as packages. We really like packages in Chocolatey. It allows you to bring in those functions as if they were built into Chocolatey. You don't have to re-implement that function at every single package you're managing. So if you're doing things like, I want to ensure I have this much space on the machine, otherwise I should fail that install, I would just put that into a module and then bring it as a extension package. I cannot talk today. And there's methods, package parameters, and other things that you can do to actually have really ability to adjust logic for a package without having to multiple packages that all install the same thing but slightly different. So that's where package parameters and install arguments come in. So we really won't have time to get into that either. But there is documentation out there for those things. We can also have the ways of ensuring if we are pushing secrets through those parameters or arguments in Chocolatey for Business, it's going to ensure that those stay out of logs. And there's ways to do that in open source. It's just a little bit more difficult. Package reducer is a big one. That actually keeps the state of Chocolatey's space usage down automatically for you. So that's pretty helpful. We'll just move on. So on our roadmap, so one of the things that we're bringing more into the business edition is more of this remote management. So if you want to have a nice dashboard where you can see all of those reports we were talking about earlier get aggregated into one location, that's our management UI. It'll also have endpoint management about it, so you'll be able to deploy out to your environments and all the ways you could think about that. Phase deployments, deploying out to some set, collections, all that's going to be in there. There'll be a command line version of the deploy. We're also going to add Windows Nano support. And I assume everybody in here knows what one-get is. Anybody not know what one-get is? Anybody not raise their hands?
What?
So package management, there's a prototype provider out there right now that was written by Microsoft 3 years ago. And it is very much a prototype. It doesn't have all the features that we had then. And it may have some security issues, so be careful with that one. But there's another one called Chocolatey Get that was also written by Microsoft. The difference was they talked to us first. So that's a good bridge until we have an official one out there. I love the name package management, by the way. It doesn't manage any packages whatsoever. So I guess they went to their supervisor and said, we're going to call it package management. And they said, get rid of one of those. It's too redundant. I don't know. So one of the big things is pack validation. So how many people in here, besides Pascal, that actually push up to the community repository and have gone through that? So you've seen it, right? So one of the really cool things when you push up to the community repository, it actually validates the quality of the package. So it looks through, it does a lot of inspection. It's trying to make sure that a lot of those common elements for consistency are there. We're actually going to bring that back into Chocolatey itself so that when you're doing the package, when you package it up, you'll get a lot of validation that you would see only if you were pushing to that community repository. We also have a verifier that tests the install and makes sure it works. There's varied love on that. Some of the other package enhancements that we're going to be doing. So if you can imagine, you may have dependencies that really only apply in, say, Windows Server 2012 or Windows 8 or whatever. So we're going to bring that stuff into Chocolatey as well. And we're kind of trying to do it in a way that's compatible so that we get as much compatibility with NuGet as we continue through our process. So I say GPG signing. I'm pretty sure we're going to support GPG signing. It's possible. We'll also support authentic code signing as well, because most organizations, internally especially where they have self-signed CAs, they're going to be a lot more comfortable with that than they might be with GPG. I'm just going to point to this one, but I'm not really going to say anything. I'll also point here. So anyway, moving on. So where does DSC come in? DSC, that is that configuration management, right? And so that it's able to manage packages. And now a lot more of the DSC stuff we've been continuing to bring up to be like these other providers that are out there. It's able to do more with the configuration of Chocolatey and ensuring it's installed as well. That says 2.3.0. I guess I didn't get the picture pasted. But yeah, it's 2.3.1, and there's going to be a new one that gets released, I think, 2.3.2. That'll have C Choco feature. We're going to talk about that, so let's move in. So I love the verbosity of this. So C Choco installer, and then the name, right? And we have to tell it where we're installing, even if we're going to the default location. And so the example here shows going to the default location. The great thing about the default location is Chocolatey will lock everything down when we go there, so we definitely want to go to that place. It's where we get locked down to administrators only for write. And we have to give it a script itself if we want to install Chocolatey offline, if we don't want to use the community repository. has to be a full script. If you go out to chocolatey.org/install.ps1, you can bring that down, or we're going to push this up to that cchoco GitHub repository so that you'll have that as part of the example, so you can have something that you use there as well. Question?
Yeah, I just noticed in the DSC resource, you're calling basically Chocolatey with a lot of parameters.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that the Ansible Chocolatey resource does the same. Is there any plans on like making something more, I don't know, like a C# object or like a native PowerShell plugin where you get like a rich object back with the results and stuff like that, so you don't have to rely on text parsing?
There could be.
There could be.
Yeah. If enough people are interested, and there is a lot of interest in that. There's been interest in that since Chocolatey was fully written in PowerShell. Back in the day when it took forever to run. cchoco source is a nice way of being able to manage Chocolatey sources. So the first thing you want to do is you want to get rid of that community repository, and the next thing you want to do is you add in your own sources, right? And so in there you can put in credentials. You can see we've done a really good job of that here. Anyway, and then give it a priority. Priority tells Chocolatey how to find packages. So if you have multiple sources, when it finds the ones with the highest priority, it's going to look for packages there first, right? And then it'll move down through that. Choco feature, this is coming in Choco V next, so the code's in. We just haven't released it yet, but this will allow us to do something like if we have a need for FIPS compliant checksums. That's really, honestly, the very first thing you want to set right after you install Chocolatey, because everything else kind of depends on that. And then one of the neat new features in Chocolatey is being able to, when I install something, and then when I upgrade it, I want it to use the same arguments. DSC not necessarily most important, but using it on the command line, this use remembered arguments for upgrades is in there as well. So the package install, the anatomy of that looks like this, right? So we get to ensure whether it's present or absent. We have the ability to pass on package parameters through this. Everything else we want to pass directly to Chocolatey, choco.exe. We use choco params for. And then auto upgrade. It just says if we want it to upgrade every time we run the resource or check for upgrades, right? And so typically this is possibly going to be true, right? So, and as you're managing those, you would just put a new version up onto that repository when you're ready to offer that to your environments. And I will say, if you are looking to get involved in contributing to Chocolatey and you're very familiar with PowerShell, this is a great place to get in. We do have that out on the GitHub repository there. Right now everything's good, so just keep that green and we'll be happy. And we also have, we do a lot of our chat stuff not in Slack, but on a tool called Gitter. I think that's how you pronounce it. But that's a nice link to get into there as well. Oh, demo. So it is that time. What time do I have until? 11:25. So I've got all right, fantastic. Sweet, we can see that. Good. So yeah, we'll start out with the concept of seeing what new looks like. And if I could spell this morning, we'll get the right package here. So we're going to create a package for Adobe Reader. And we'll jump over here. We'll kind of see one of the nice things that we're seeing with that. This is a default template, so it's going to generate a lot of, we like to say, just-in-time documentation, a lot of interweave documentation to help you through that process. As you get really used to that, you may create your own templates to kind of clean that up and use smaller bits, also to get rid of some of that verbosity. But let's just take a look at that really quickly. And one of the new things that we have in 0.10.8 is we're helping you through the process of figuring out how you're going to use this package, because it does change the way you'll actually do the packaging. And so we give you a bit of a decision matrix in this to-do. If you're an organization, you're doing internal use, you're probably going to do some of these things. Otherwise, you may be pushing out to the community repository with or without distribution rights, and some of that. And so we're also giving you kind of some knowledge about the different types of packages that folks use. And then kind of walking you through how you would set up some of those contents. We also point you to a test environment. So there's a Hyper-V image and a VirtualBox image set on this this test environment. So you can test the infrastructure changes inside of Vagrant, inside of something else, so you're not actually breaking your own machine, which is very helpful. And then there's a workshop. And so that workshop we gave at WinOps, but you can actually go through it on your own. It is out there, it is online, and it has a set of labs, and you can just go through that. And if you do find errata, you just let us know about it, and we'll get that fixed. So we had a couple of those things come up. The Hyper-V stuff is new, and so we had found out a lot of things about Hyper-V and Vagrant. They don't like each other very much, but for some reason that's there. So, but there's also a README here, and the README is going to kind of walk you through that process the first couple of times, point you off to some documentation. And under that, we also have a nice reference for all the different environment variables that are in Chocolatey that you can use to get passed to those scripts. So there's a new spec. And again, very much interweave documentation. We're trying to set you on the right path. And so we have the package-specific section. We have the software-specific section. And then, kind of the big thing when you're looking at how would I manage software, how do I manage dependencies, that's where package management is very strong. And so if we take a look here and we say, maybe I have a dependency, just go with it, on Java for Adobe Reader, and I need it to be at least version 6, but less than version 8. Right? And so trying to manage that and then managing any dependencies that Java has and going all the way up that chain, if you could imagine doing that in anything other than package management, that can become a very big, complex, convoluted thing that nobody wants to touch, right? And so it just works at some point, and they're like, let's not mess with that. It's very, very easy in package management, right? There's a couple of scripts here. We're going to come right back to these. There's a couple of files that are only related to the community repository, so they're the first to go. And so we have our uninstall. Again, 9 times out of 10, you're probably not going to need it. But in case you do want to be explicit here, you could say this is going to be Adobe Reader inside of programs and features, that display name. I got a little bit of a wild card here, so in case they put the version after it, I have to worry about that. And the file type is MSI, and if it's MSI, I'm completely done with this because I already have the right silent argument, so unless I want to add or take away to it, the rest of this code is just there to make sure that happens. If it's not MSI, I have to figure out what those silent arguments need to be and provide those appropriately. And there's some other functions. There's a link to that here at the bottom. But do keep in mind, this is just PowerShell, so we can just say, write hosts, installed, right? So there is a before modify script as well, and this is a bit newer. It allows us to, before upgrade, before uninstall from the package that's currently installed, the opportunity to shut down processes or services. So if I have any kind of locking, Chocolatey is actually pretty good at handling locking, but there are some scenarios where it may not. So you may want to be using this before modify to ensure that. And then in the install script itself, we have a lot of instruction in here, especially in the new version, that kind of walks you down that path of I'm an organization, and so I'm using my own internal packages. It's going to say you want to be using this. So what it points us to here is file location. We prefer embedded, so bring all of the binaries into the package, because when we get that package, we have everything we need to be able to make sure that things get installed properly. And if they see that the size of that package goes over a gig or 500 megabytes or whatever threshold is comfortable for your company, then we might push that out to a share location, right? We may put that up to an internal URL that we're going to download from. Right, and that's here. And then when we come down here, lower than the args, right? So we have install Chocolatey package, but it also tells us about install Chocolatey install package. Yes, naming is hard. Install Chocolatey install package. We'll use the files where they are. It does not try to copy them to a temp location first, right? Or you can download it from somewhere to a temp location and then use it. And so that's always preferred to use the one when we have the local files, because we don't copy it somewhere else also and use up more space. Or we're using a share location and there's required files sitting around that thing we're trying to call. We can't figure out why it's not working until we dig in and find out it's over here in the temp and it didn't bring any of the other files with it. And so that's about where we're going to finish on that. We will run a script really quickly that's going to help us create some packages, but we're not really going to go into a lot of those business features. I guess I can show you real quick what it looks like. So it's going through, it's creating packages for me. And it is this last script over here on the left. And so I've just said, hey, instead of giving it a name, I said Choco new file, right? And I pointed it directly to those files in this, this folder here. So I got some files in a folder. That's like our archive. Of course, in a demo environment, it's going to work 100% of the time. Everything's good to go, first time go. It's 70% of the software that's out there is going to be able to do that for. Would get to-do lists for the things that are not. And so I wanted it for this one password thing. I'm also going to go get a different version of 1Password just so that we get 2 versions up there. And so I'm going to go ahead and create a package for it as well. All right, so I'm going to grab both of those. I'm going to go ahead and push them up to a local repository I have so that we can install them. And so we just need to go get that path here. We've already pre-installed it. So this is that chocolatey.server. And you can see here, we get some information. And when we, whoa, that wasn't too big, okay. There we go, that's what I was looking for. So it's going to show us how we can push up to the source, so we get all that information up there when we hit it remotely. If we hit it on localhost, we can also find out what that key is. Right? And where is that key? Oh, there it is, Chocolatey rocks. All right, so here we have 1Password. So what we need to do, and I'll slide this up since it'll be at the top of the screen that way for us. We're going to do Choco push, and then we need to point it to that 1Password package. And so we're going to push up both of these so we have them both up on that server. And so the source, again, that was localhost, right? Not the Chocolatey, that's where all the operation stuff happens. And so we're going to do localhost. It's not going to work for us because we forgot to give it an API key. So we'll go ahead and pass that in as well. Go ahead and push that up. Choco set API key minus S HTTP. So we don't like specifying that key on the command line all the time. And so we're going to go ahead and pass that in once. And then we're going to push up the other package. So no, that's the one we want. Oh, we don't want 2 new packages there. All right, so now we pushed up 2 packages there. We're going to query this source to make sure it has them. Right, so Choco search. And the name of this one, if we did a Choco source list, so Choco source, that will be list by default. That name is called internal server. And so we will do Choco search minus S internal server. Typing is hard sometimes. And it looks like there's 1 package. We know we have 2 there, so what we're needing to do, we need this, which one is it? We'll just tab here until we find the one we're looking for. Local only, no, we want to see all packages that are up there. It's in here somewhere, I swear. We'll just do that. Oh, that's because I did the dash dash. It didn't give me the A. So there we can see the multiple versions, so we can query that. If we need to query that in a way that is something we can use for parsing, we would give it the -R. That limits the output for us so that we can actually use that to pipe into other things. All right, and so we got those 2 packages up there. Let's see, let's make sure we don't got one installed already, so it does not look like it. Fantastic. So coming over here to our software management, and that is, it's a lot bigger on your screen than it is on mine. Let's just be honest. So here we go. We're going to ensure that Chocolatey is installed. Let's see if I can make this a bit bigger. It loves me. Made it bigger, but we can't see anything now. There we go, a little better. Go away, please. All right, so again, this is what we kind of saw on the slide deck a bit. All right, so we're trying to install Chocolatey or ensure that it's installed. We want to install this 1Password package, right? And so one of the other things that we're going to need here is we need to tell it about the sources. And so I'm going to go grab those really quickly. And we're going to go ahead and set, get rid of that default source, and go ahead and add in the other. right after Chocolatey gets installed. We'll probably need that dependency there, but I think it might work, so we'll leave that out for now. And let's see if this works. Let's see if we can build it first. The greatest thing about code is all this debugging stuff. How many people do not use Visual Studio Code? How many people use it? All right. And so a big reason to say I would use it, a lot of it comes into some of the stuff you see, and we may not see that. So functions, yeah, so there's one remove item. You're going to get a lot of that, a lot of the tab completion that comes with that. Really, really fantastic, and also the debugging support is phenomenal. But even though the execution policy is set correctly, we still have to come and set it in here, which kind of is interesting. Execution policy. Oh yeah, restrict, unrestricted, or let's just go bypass for now. I didn't like it. We'll just go unrestricted then. All right, so now we're going to run this, and still marked out. And run once. Cross our fingers. All right, so everything came out there. Now we're actually going to do it again. This time we're going to try to apply the changes. And this may or may not work. Famous last words. The best part of the demo is just watching all the text go by, right? Is it syncing? It looks like it did not do the right thing there, but we got rid of that. Hopefully, got rid of that one. So it brought it in. Oh, I know why. We didn't turn off the progress reporting, so that was one thing we probably wanted to do, so you don't see all this mess in here. Oh, it's done. Wow, that was fast. I'm surprised. I'm excited. Yay, it worked. Now let's make sure it actually worked first. So did we get 1Password installed? And we did? Fantastic. So that's a good thing, right? And now we can come back and query and see what we have. So we'll do Choco list. We'll do local only. And yep, there's 1Password. So we're pretty happy with that. We got it installed, and now we can move forward. And so unfortunately, I didn't point to the right version when I did that, so we don't get to see the upgrade as much, but I would handle the upgrade as we put those newer versions up. All right. So let's go. No, thank you. Should I upgrade it now? Wait till later. All right. So, we've talked to a lot of people, and the big question that we ask them sometimes is, once you go Chocolatey, would you go back to other methods? And we get a pretty resounding answer here. Right, and so now we have questions. Go ahead, sir.
My problem is, if I've got a package, so this is purely focusing on the community side of things. So I've got a package, it's updated fairly regularly. I can't distribute, obviously, the MSR, the exe. And the link itself doesn't change. So the download link is constantly, it's constant version number rev. So how or what is the best practice for maintaining that in the community?
That is a great question.
Could you repeat it in the video, please?
I will. So the question was, pushing up to the community repository, and the URL for the download, because you can't embed it, is always the same. How do you handle that so that the new versions of the package go up? Best practice around that. And so the answer is, we'll take back a look here, that to-do list that I mentioned. Kind of grazed past that, but right at the very bottom of that decision matrix in step 1, where you don't have distribution rights, And the download location is the same for all versions. I'm trying to make this a little bigger, right? There's a tool called Automatic Updater. And so if you go out to chocolatey.org to automatic packages, you don't need to worry about the rest of the link there. Just go to that link, and that will get you pointed up with Automatic Updater. So when a new version comes available, and I'll show you what this looks like. It's actually pretty good. If we go out to Chocolatey core team packages on GitHub, they use Auto Updater here. And they do it. There's probably quite a few packages that go through this thing. But this is what that report looks like. All right, so this runs every 6 hours on AppVer. All right, so it's completely hands-off for that. And it runs, it's doing 197 packages. It did it in 3 minutes. All right, so it does a lot of parallelization of that, and does it pretty well. And so you get a nice report out at the end of that. It's just showing you, here's everything that had no changes, right, or had changes. So all of this stuff here is getting upgraded automatically. So if something comes out, right, a new release of something within 6 hours, it's on that community repository, at least going through, all of the automated stuff before it goes over. We know organizations are using this internally as well. So when you're taking a look at it, there is an update all script that comes out there. There's actually a template repository you can get started from that has all this stuff kind of set up appropriately for you. The pointers to AppVer itself. I don't know how good that's going to look there. So, yeah. And so it's got some things. The nice thing about AppVer is if you do need those secure keys, you can get those generated. And the way they do that is pretty good, right? So for anybody who hasn't used AppVer, and Steve talked about it a bit, but it's pretty phenomenal. I was going to show you one package just so you get a concept of what that looks like. Let's say maybe is Firefox a good one? It uses update helper, but this kind of gives you an idea. It's all PowerShell, right? So it's actually, a lot of times it's reaching out. Maybe this isn't the best one to look at. It's probably a bit more advanced, but it's looking out to a particular page, right, out on the internet and looking for releases, and then it does regex to figure out. Regex is probably in that update helper, but then it has all the stuff that it's going to change out. And so in the new spec and the files that are in the package, how it's going to rename stuff, right? And so it'll actually reach into that new spec file, it reaches into the install and uninstall, and it makes these changes for you. If you want a really good conversation about it, this guy right here, Pascal, just over 2 from you. He's got a lot of experience with it. Let's see. I get another one that's maybe not as crazy. What's a good one that's not hard?
Git, maybe.
Oh, the Git one? Yeah, so, I want to get installed, didn't I? Yeah, there you go. Time is out. Other questions? I'll be out in the hall, so come find us at the booth too. So, all right.